What is making headlines in the dailies this morning? We're going to begin with the Daily Nation, and of course it captures exactly what transpired over a couple of hours ago. And it says, survivor, twice lucky, put on a defense for most of the two-day trial. Meru Governor Mwangaza denied all 7 allegations leveled against her, citing a political witch hunt by local leaders under the orchestration of external forces. And a majority of senators cast their votes with her, handing the embattled governor a lifeline and a chance to continue serving as county chief. But senators fault both the executive and county assembly. Why? It's a splash on page 425. We're going to have a look at that in just a moment. On the sidelines of the DN as well, officials held as cheating claims rock KCSE exams. It's the examinations that are ongoing in secondary schools, and of course issues of cheating allegations emerging, with top education officials suspended from overseeing the test, and some even arrested. Let's have a look at, let's see what else is there. In the second page of the DN, what is captured there is how Eastleigh got its mojo back. Well, it's an analysis, and known for decades for its bustling markets, including the famous Garissa Lodge. This Nairobi suburb quickly earned the nickname Little Mogadishu due to its large Somali population and its cultural and economic influence. And there's a lot that has been happening in Eastleigh. A report there by Bernard Mwinzi. And just a quick one, it says, standing on the rooftop of the newest mall in this once forsaken land, observing, analyzing, admiring and soaking it all in, one cannot fail to notice how everything has changed and how everything now seems to blend in with everything else. The crowds, the spanking new apartment blocks, the traffic, the riot of multicolored LEDs and the silhouetted frames of men and women and children all appear to be waltzing in perfect harmony, as if somehow the ebb and flow of life has found a new rhythm so profound, so strong, that every little thing here has to be in sync. Yes, he says, the new Eastleigh is a community in poetic mission. It's a story you can be able to read. It's a full, actually, feature there by Bernard Mwinzi. Interesting if you're interested to know how Eastleigh got its mojo back. Meanwhile, back to our top story there. Mwangaza surviving that impeachment bid as senators dismiss MCA's allegations. Well, that's the embattled Meru governor, who about 1 a.m. actually today survived that motion that sought to end her and send her packing. Well, the county boss immediately broke down in tears when senators took the final vote to dismiss all the 7 charges leveled against her. And this is what the Speaker of the Senate, Amason Kingi, said, and I quote, "The Senate has not upheld any of the charges. The Senate has failed to remove the governor by way of impeachment. Accordingly, she remains the county governor of Meru." And by midnight, the senators, about 47 delegations, started voting on those 7 charges leveled against the governor. The senators voted on each charge separately, and it took about, starting with the, so it started with the issue of misappropriation and misuse of county resources, and then there was the issue of nepotism. You had the issue of unrelated and ethical practices, bullying, vilification and demeaning other leaders, illegal appointments and usurpation of statutory powers, contempt of court, illegally naming a public road after her husband, and contempt of the assembly. So those were the 7 charges that Kawira Mwangaza was facing. Now, in particular, she sought the forgiveness of Meru Senator Murungi Kadhuri and MCAs and committed to promote unity among leaders. But all these charges were now, not taken into consideration, and they were dismissed by the Senate when they did vote. And that means that Kawira Mwangaza will continue serving as the governor of Meru County. And you know, interesting, because actually in the studio, I'm being joined by Mheshimiwa Isaac Ruto. A very good morning to you, former governor.
Yes.
Now a member of the Judicial Service Commission.
Yes. And
also former chair of the Council of Governors. Yes. Karibu sana, it's been long since we've seen you on our airwaves. And I hope you've been keeping well.
Well, very well.
Indeed.
As you can see.
Now, you know, as a former governor, it would be very interesting to hear, you know, your thoughts on what happened here. This is an independent candidate who took over power. Very interestingly, and first female governor in Meru.
Yes.
Facing her second impeachment motion.
Yes.
Still serving, you know, in less than 2 years. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yes, I think that really comes to show how difficult it is in the counties to function with MCAs who have specific objectives other than that which the governor has. The good lady from Meru is new in politics, but has good intentions. Unfortunately, she's working in a field she's very unfamiliar with. I'm sure she did not bargain for the type of witch hunting that can happen on the political front. But thank God, at least the senators are looking at it a bit more objectively this time.
Because we've seen even the voting patterns were completely not party affiliated like what we've seen before, right?
Yes.
It was a very sort of neutral vote across the party lines.
Yes.
Yeah, so that would speak quite about something.
Even me looking at the charges, I didn't see anything that could be sustained. Most of it is petty. And I know how MCAs behave sometimes, especially when they start looking around for other objectives, other than that which is the common good for the people. We saw that even in Kivuta Kibwana's place.
Correct.
Yeah, they really gave him hell. Yet Kivuta Kibwana wanted to deliver the right thing for the people. But the MCAs had a different idea and a different agenda. I can only say that I think it is an indication that the national executive is not interfering with the counties. Everybody now is voting freely, including now, especially at the Senate, that they just discuss plainly as themselves.
I remember in October we had the Council of Governors who were meeting and re-electing their leaders, saying that we sort of need to, what do you call it, change the threshold of how you can impeach the governor, sort of make it, you know, a bit more stringent, like how you would impeach an MCA, a member of parliament, like that the, you know, the threshold for impeaching a governor is quite low.
It is very low. We also need to get away of public participation. What do the people of Meru also say? Yeah, and I think all these things should be synchronized so that it is the same threshold as that of the members of parliament. The MPs protected themselves, the MCAs protected themselves. The same constitution had put in place a situation in which MPs could be recalled, MCAs could be recalled, but the threshold put, you can never touch an MP. But the governors are fair game for everyone. Yeah.
So which means any political machinations can take place, and that would be at the disadvantage of a governor who then, you know, ends up being on the other side of the table.
Most governors got a lot of sabotage from previously through political machinations.
Right.
And especially the Senate used to harass counties because they want to be governors in the next election. So they would come up with trumped charges. They would even create propaganda and try investigating that propaganda. And they are the ones who created it.
That's and I mean, it's not the first time we've seen that. We've also seen some of the other governors right now also sort of in that particular mix. We've seen the Kiambu governor as well, who's facing a number of issues with the MCAs, but I think that has sort of been settled right now. Which other governor? I think there's a bit of an issue, if I can remember, but I'll get that. There's another governor who's also facing, you know, an impeachment sort of, you know, motion against the MCAs. But this is where we are. Meru Governor Kuria Mwangaza will continue serving as the governor of that county. Meanwhile, let's see what else we have on the DN very quickly here. Away from that story is, all right, senators call for Kuria's impeachment as well. President William Ruto's administration appears to be at a crossroads as top-ranking officials find themselves embroiled in public spats and social media exchanges, the infighting exposing the power intrigues and battles within the ruling government. In the latest incidents, Public Service Cabinet Secretary CS Kuria and his Transport and Roads counterpart Kipchumba Murkomen have found themselves in the crosshairs of legislators. Well, you do have senators allied to Kenya Kwanza yesterday demanding for the sacking of Kuria, describing him as a rogue and an embarrassment to the government and the country. This was led actually by Senate Majority Leader Aaron Cheruiyot, who was a close ally of the president, and the lawmakers asking the head of state to crack the whip on his rogue ministers. And this comes after Kuria cast aspersions on the intentions of some of the senators in the impeachment trial of the Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza through a post on his Twitter, that is the X post, on Tuesday evening. The CS listing 13 senators, 11 from Kenya Kwanza, whom he said were being misled. He went on to name all of them, including Aaron Cheruiyot, and then in a swift rejoinder, you had Cheruiyot saying the CS is an embarrassment to the appointing authority, and that the Kericho senator said the post was in bad taste as it pointed senators as cheap people who have no cognitive abilities to make interpretations of matters before them and make sober decisions in the interest of the constitution of the people. I mean, Mheshimiwa, when you're looking at whatever, the things that have been happening right now, the public spats, and most of these people who were really high-ranking officials within the ruling coalition, you see an issue there?
No, it's normal amongst politicians for them to rankle. It's not
so
new.
This is normal political wrangling,
That is normal. That's normal. Some of them are jostling for space. Others would like to create more space for themselves. So it's a normal thing, as long as it does not interfere with the normal functioning of the ministries. And in my own view, ministers should be allowed to deliver on their mandate as best as they can, and they should only be judged on that basis. But the other issues about political alignments or that you can hardly control it, because that is politics. That is what it is all about. Right. They do that all the time.
Part of this political space.
Yes. Each one creates his own space, and he must jostle and push.
I mean, it's not the first time we've seen this happening in different administrations as well.
Yes, they normally happen. That should not be a distraction. And when they don't do that, it means they feel they are not doing anything.
Right.
So that's fine.
All right. And also joining us in studio is Jeremiah Kioni, Jubilee Secretary General. Very good morning. Good to see you.
Morning.
Karibu sana.
Asante
As
sana.
we look forward to today, later in the afternoon, we're giving you a brief of what is going to be happening. But before I move on, I just perhaps to get your quick thoughts on this. We moved on from that, but yes, it's a big one. Kawira Mwangaza surviving her second impeachment before the Senate, and now she'll continue serving. What are your thoughts on what happened?
That's a very serious problem within Meru, because I think quite a number of the leaders in Meru are behind the impeachment. They seem to survive to lose again to this lady, and I did engage some of them before this impeachment, and there is a fear that then there was a fear that if she survived, they may not be able to remove her during the electioneering program, for the reason that I think she has some very populist approach to issues on the ground. But that now seems to have been their views, because they have lost. So it's a very serious issue for those who are eyeing for leadership in Meru. They have to change.
Was it because of her leadership style and some of her ideas, or is it just political, sort of what she termed as political witch hunt for jostling for that position she holds right now?
Well, like my colleague says, political witch hunt, you can always call it whatever you want to call it. Those are political battles that are going to be there. But the reality is that you could hear of some very serious allegations, but you can actually see maybe they didn't have the backing of anything tangible.
Right.
But there is also what they don't say publicly, that there is a fear that they may not be able to remove her when the opportunity is presented through a general election or otherwise. But it's an interesting time, or these are interesting times to see people surviving impeachment. During Isaac's time, I don't think anybody survived. If they did...
No, I mean, we had Governor Wambora. They called him the governor with 9 lives.
9 lives eventually remained there, but
They survived during my term. It is this other term where they was thrown out.
The second term.
The second term.
Yes, when they were
first
thrown
term,
out. Yes.
They all survived.
But the only reason why they survived is that those who sought to become governors for the first wave were serious individuals who really had something to do in terms of devolution. And they went there to, you know, impact on the lives of Kenyans. Thereafter, it's not the case. You can't say that is the case. Every successive election we are getting, and this is my opinion, we are getting worse. We are getting worse every other time. I don't want to give my personal position, whatever, but I'm here to talk about my personal views on it. Surviving, but not useful for Meru.
All right, not useful for Meru. And also, very quick thoughts on what it also transpired yesterday. You had the Cabinet Secretary, Public Service there, CS Kuria, who's now sort of a loggerheads with some of the Kenya Kwanza Alliance members of Parliament. We've seen some of them in the Senate calling out the Cabinet Secretary as well. Nothing
new. What did you expect from Kuria?
So what, you also see it as sort of political wrangling, as normal?
Yes. Nothing new.
Right.
That is what he is best known for, and he will serve what he can serve, what he cooks. So let them expect more.
So nothing out of the ordinary.
Nothing.
That is Kuria in his element.
That's Kuria in his element.
All right. I see. I hear. Okay. High expectations as Ruto delivers a maiden scorecard there. Well, Kenyans also expect President William Ruto to address a myriad of issues affecting them during his maiden State of the Nation address in Parliament today. This address coming at a time where Kenyans are struggling with the high cost of living, with the government warning that cost of fuel is likely to rise to 300 shillings per litre during the address of the joint sitting of both houses of Parliament as provided for in Article 132 of the Constitution. The President is expected to outline the progress made in his bottom-up economic transformation agenda. You have nominated MP John Mbadi, saying the President has no choice but to address the issues affecting Kenyans, such as the issue of fuel prices. All right, and Mukurweini MP John Kagushi also saying he expects the President to explain how he will handle public debt collection and use of taxes and the new university funding model as well. And the economy under President Ruto has certainly taken a beating, and the head of state will be expected to shed light on the measures his government is taking to reverse the trend. We'll be diving much deeper into this conversation in a moment, but just quick thoughts, Mheshimiwa Ruto. Expectations are quite high, but the most prominent feature of what Kenyans expect the President to really address really revolves around the issue of the economy, the fuel prices, the high cost of living, the issue of taxes as well, the debt burden. From where you sit, what do you expect to hear from the President?
I expect the President to simply ask Kenya to brace for difficult times ahead, because that is the reality. We are coming from the background of, remember, the devastation by COVID-19 all over the world. Remember also the fact that Kenya has huge debts that must be paid, with even with the shilling depreciating. That means the debts are actually going to double on the basis alone of the depreciation of the Kenya shilling. Therefore, even taxes are more likely to rise. The issue really is that the whole world is facing a serious economic challenge. Remember, even Britain is recording a negative growth, and several other European countries are in the same spot. You hear even the US is talking of possibilities of recession. The world is facing serious economic threat with the background of the wars that are now threatening. Remember what's happening in Ukraine, now Middle East, all those problems. And oil is a major impactor on this, together with the food shortage that has been occasioned by these situations. So I think it's imperative on the President to take the bull by the horns and tell Kenyans the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And Kenyans had better understand that there is no panacea, there is no shortcut to these things. But domestic production in agriculture ought to be strengthened and boosted because it's agriculture that is likely to keep us afloat. We see tourism is under serious challenge. Other countries have taken over our tourists, even Tanzania, and I think it's because of our own bad behaviors in some other fields.
Well, do you think it would be unfair for those who say that the ruling administration is steering the economy in the wrong direction? You know, some say, look, the President inherited a bad economy already,
yes,
but is he steering us in the right direction when it comes to, you know, matters economy, or are we really going the wrong way when you're talking about issues of taxation specifically, that Kenyans say, look, we're being overtaxed?
I think it is only imperative that the matter be tackled head on. There are soft options, but can be very disastrous. If we opted to collect taxes and use it for subsidies, there would be no development, no employment. There will be a total mess. There is no way you can start subsidizing fuel to the extent that we go back to 120 when the shilling is 154 to the dollar. There is no way you can do that. And therefore, and the economy must continue. I think you just have to be brave enough. Any president who doesn't want to be complacent would have to face the challenge squarely and let Kenyans know that these are tough times and we have got very few soft options. So the question of taxation is that we all have to continue to bear the burden. There is little, we made these decisions in the past. Not all of it can be heaped, say, on the previous administration. These are global issues. Some of it, like debt, maybe you may have questions. But overall, the real problem is we are where we are right now, and the whole world is there. There are mistakes we've made, like in productivity. The domestic production has gone down, and Kenyans no longer care about what is produced locally. They have all started buying from China and other places. They have forgotten that they can do production here. There is even a serious failing on, and which the president, I think, has started addressing. Agriculture, for example, the arrival of fair fertilizer has increased production of, domestic production of maize, wheat, and we can see also an upturn in milk. The only challenge will be, we've got to now know how are we going to support the storage of the food. If you go to places like Narok, you find farmers are drying their maize on the road and wheat. You see the same thing in Eldoret. We've got to revive serious board. We've got to talk about strategic food reserves. Because if we now have to import food in the near future, it will be more disastrous. Let's battle with fuel. Let's reduce most of the other imports that we keep on looking for the dollar, because the shilling will destroy.
All right. Bwana Kioni, just quick thoughts as well. We'll get into this deeper, but just your thoughts, expectations as a Kenyan, as we wait for the president to address the nation.
With your permission, I want to say one more thing about this impeachment. That a group of MCAs came to me from Meru, because we have them in our party.
All right.
And they came and told me the whole of Meru is behind this impeachment. I asked them to let me know the grounds. And I told them, those are not impeachable grounds.
The 7 charges.
You will lose. They sounded like delay, hearsays and such things. And you can see it came to pass. So on the other side of it, I think Senate was fairly objective on those issues, because you could literally see this is really, yes, problems do exist, but they had not sat down to put them down and look at the standard of impeachment that has been set there before. Having said that, I think it is we all look forward to hear what Mheshimiwa William Ruto would want to be saying later in the day. Certainly, I've sat in through this national dialogue process, and it took a while to convince those who had been sent there by the system, for them to also agree that there is a problem in this country in terms of cost of living. They continued on the same campaign tail of saying tutapanga, tumeteua, tutapanga, tutawakalia, those things. And I don't think we are, it's going to be useful at all if we do not see, like Mheshimiwa says, if there is no willingness to take things on. You remember why we are where we are, among other reasons, is because we refused to accept that COVID-19 had very negative impact on the lives of Kenyans and on the local economy. And it is in owning up to those situations that you're able to face the challenges and come up with workable solutions. We didn't want to admit that the Ukrainian and Russian war was going to weigh heavily on the pockets on Kenyans. And we actually said it is the management of the economy then by individuals who are in charge, including the former President Uhuru Kenyatta, and we seems to have had very simple, simplistic approach to this. Once I'm there, you will see everything down, and it has taken more than a year to wake up to that reality that it is. It takes a lot of sitting in the office behind the desks and engaging professionals, listening to them, listening to Kenyans, and making interventions that are useful across the board. I hear what my colleague says, and it's true. We may have had a bumper harvest this time round, but it's not just because on account of the fertilizer. He may be more of a farmer than I, but I believe that fertilizer without rains, which we have not had for a couple of years in the manner that we got it this year, will also have contributed to the bumper harvest. If we don't think of agriculture outside the rain-fed approach, we are going to go back to where we are in the coming years if we don't get the kind of rains that we have received this year. And again, there is always the building on what others had done before. You cannot come into office and say nothing was done in the county of Bomet when Isaac was there, and you want to start on a clean slate. You will have wasted and lost very precious time. And that's where we are with this current regime. They have lost a lot of time, a whole year. It is good to see him coming to Parliament. If the Constitution requires him to have done this every year, this is outside the 1 year in office, and many other things. So it will be interesting. I am not as optimistic as my brother is, because if you look at borrowing, yes, you may say that we have done a lot of borrowing, but up to where we are, 1.2 trillion shillings in 1 year. It is also not anything that you can allow to also go without it mentioned. Look at yesterday, I see they have now a new team of ambassadors who were passed yesterday. But in the process of doing that, they ignore any red flags that had been raised by institutions like EACC. Watch out on this individual. He has a case against him, or his background is a little belonging to the skunks. But they say there is no evidence produced or provided. You are complaining about Moses Kuria. I mean, from the day one, there are individuals who are in that cabinet where Kenyans who are saying honestly, we may not have the facts, but honestly. And
but this is, you know,
it may be
a group of, I mean, it's the individuals that President William Ruto put faith in to ensure that, you know, his agenda is properly implemented, right?
So it is time for him to say what the eminent Kenyans in put in office have achieved, other than insulting senators and their colleagues around and telling us to go and dig our own wells when fuel is going up, and tells us it's even going to go up.
But you're the same person who said Moses Kuria is in politics, right?
Yes, but is your choice. But it's not a choice that we are happy about as Kenyans. That's what Kenyans, you'll hear them saying.
Right.
But it's a choice we may have to live in for the coming 1 year. A serious bladder that Kenyans did that is going to be a one term.
All right.
I'm sure Isaac is looking forward to doing a better bid at the end of this one-term bladder that Kenyans are in.
Is it, Mheshimiwa Ruto?
Yes.
Don't ask him to respond to anything I say. He's a seasoned politician, a very serious governor.
Oh, all right. All right. But anyway, I want us to hold on to those thoughts, because when we come back, we'll continue delving much deeper into some of these issues. There's the issue of security as well, education matters, and again, also still going back to the issue of, I think it's a conversation we've had quite a long time, the subsidies issue, the collection of more taxes. We'll come back to that in a moment. And also, governors are set to meet to take stock of progress, threats, or to devolution as well. They're actually retreating in Narok County to take stock of the milestones and challenges facing devolution. Can we take a quick break? When we come back, that is where we'll continue from on the newspaper review this morning. Stay with us. The hashtag AM Live NTV, State of the Nation NTV at NTV Kenya. At Zainab Ismail. We'll be back. All right, welcome back to the program. You are watching AM Live this morning as we take a look at some of the news making headlines across the country and also beyond, as of course we also focus today on the State of the Nation address expected to be presented by President William Ruto before a joint sitting of Parliament. That's the National Assembly as well as the Senate, and this is stipulated in the Constitution. It is his maiden State of the Nation address. We'll be touching on a number of issues, also expectations quite high. Talk to us. I'll be sampling some of your views during the course of this broadcast. It's a wall-to-wall coverage. We have our teams on the ground. We'll also be joining Olive Barrows and Lofty Matambo, who are in Parliament in just a little bit later on, but also our reporters across different parts of the country will be giving us a brief of what Kenyans expect from this State of the Nation address. But also quickly, like I mentioned, governors are actually meeting in Narok to take stock of the progress and threats to devolution. And the Council of Governors, the 47 county chiefs, kicked off the two-day meeting in Narok, in which they will also audit their performance in 2023. Going by the theme of the meeting, reflect, realign and renew. They'll be discussing leadership wrangles, the financial crunch and attempts to claw back devolved functions, among other issues. You have now Governor Patrick Ole Ntutu, who is the host, saying during the retreat, we will review the progress made during the past year in office, reflect on the gains and challenges of devolution since inception, and discuss the way forward. And of course, among the leadership challenges counties are facing impeachment threats, like what we've just witnessed with Meru County, poor working relations between governors and their deputies, and members of county assemblies have also been accused of becoming lynch mobs, targeting governors, their deputies and their executive committee members for impeachment. Mheshimiwa Ruto, just what you had mentioned actually a little bit earlier on in terms of what they're terming, they're actually saying, you know, members of the county assembly being accused of being lynch mobs, you know, against their own governors. This is some of the issues that will be tackled in the take stock of the governors in Narok. What else do you perhaps expect, you know, as a former governor, you expect them to sort of look at when they have this sit down?
Yeah, I would like them to also focus now on strengthening the intergovernmental relations body. That is, both the Council of Governors together with the national government, strengthening the summit and IBEC, and more consultation within the ministries concerned on both sides, so that the policies coming up are jointly agreed on. Right. Because there is a tendency for some very good ideas to come from national government, but then they have not consulted the counties. Some very good ideas the counties have, but the national government have already made a different decision. And these tend to slow a synchronized way of addressing economic challenges. Like we've seen a lot of good ideas from national government on agriculture. But you see, basically agriculture is a heavily devolved function. Very good ideas on healthcare. But to what extent is it in sync with what the counties are doing? The other things also, like especially the public service. You see, the county staff are yet to be professionalized. We were supposed to declare the service in the counties as part of the public service of the Republic of Kenya, so that we develop a professional team. And we were supposed to link national government with that, so that then even if officers in Kilifi would like to move to Meru, they should be free to move and continue having their pensions. Unless we develop professional staff in the counties, we are still living, we are still having an ad hoc management style in the counties. As soon as
that's
a
a
new
huge
governor
gap,
comes,
actually.
Yeah?
That's a huge challenge.
It's a huge challenge. The last time, the governors that leave with their staff. Right. Another group comes and they become mobilized. And then the MCS also behave the same way. The end result is we will not see progress in the counties if this type of situation continues. We need to relook at what stopped after the first term of governors. Sort
of transition structures to ensure that whatever was left for the benefit of the Kenyans will continue. And those structures remain in place and very stable, even as, you know, we have new people coming and others, you know, elected as well.
It should be the governor and his CECs who are exiting. But people like the public service head of the counties, they are called chief officers. Chief officers, CEOs. Those ones ought to be professionals because they are supposed to be recruited professionally and they are supposed to manage programs. And there has to be a more elaboration on the handing over process so that the new governors must really accept what was going on.
All right.
And then again, the question of discipline in budgets. We've seen situations in which county governments hand over huge pending bills unpaid, and yet you are not supposed to incur any expenditure unless there is a commensurate assignment of funds. So what really happens to the extent that you exhaust the funds and you still have pending bills? How did you create the pending bills? If you had the funds, how have you spent the funds and still have pending bills? And that was the work of the controller of budget, and I don't know whether the controller of budget is still focused on this. Those are the more serious and pertinent issues that counties need to address.
Right.
Yes.
All right. Mheshimiwa Kioni, your thoughts on the issues that are, county governments are facing right now, perhaps what they need to tackle in this meeting?
I was going to ask Governor Isaac whether he is invited as one of the keynote speakers, on whether he has ever been invited back to those platforms. For the reason that, one is I know him. We were in Muge together when we were crafting this devolved thing. And he was very passionate. By the way, I still remember him sitting, or us sitting. We were just about 5 in Parliament, midnight, talking about devolution. Right. And I was always impressed by his grasp on it. And it is not because I came to say anything good about him today. But the reality of it is this. Devolution will be lost in this country if we continue with this thread. When you become a bedfarer to the national government, you will lose devolution. We are devolving from the national government, and it has been war from day one. You take it away from the executive by force. And that's why he did best during the first term. And we saw Paranya also come and punch very hard. You cannot be friendly to the national government and get devolution anywhere. You are telling the national government, we are going to do that service better. Or you are coming too close to our services. We do not want you to come into health without our mandate. It's a devolved function. You cannot be invited to a health function. You should be the one inviting the national government. But I see these governors, and it's even an embarrassment that they are going to retreating to take stock. Take stock of what? The issues that were brought to Azimio by some senators, two senators, Osotsi and I think Sifuna, they clearly said we are losing devolution. The bills that are being passed by the national government and the National Assembly, Parliament, within Parliament, the National Assembly, they are already clawing back on gains made from devolution. And you can actually see there was supposed to be transition and continuity because the first term was very chaotic. Very many employees from the national government had been seconded to the county government, and they were making it very difficult for people with new ideas to take off because they were still in the old order. But we are still back there where we have no, public servants who can be able to say this is what the other governors were doing, continue from here. But one of the reports we received during the NADOC discussions was that out of the 47 counties, only about 4 or 5 of them have lived up to the expectations of the Constitution, to the fact that they should only employ 70% from within the county and 30% the minority. What did we see? What did we see during those open day stakeholders presentation? Most of the people came asking for more counties, driven by what? The feeling that we've been marginalized. We have no say in this county. Yet, the Constitution provides for ways of ensuring that everybody who falls within the boundaries of a specific county feels part of that process. And that was a clear indicator that we have lost on devolution. And we will need very serious governors to come back and fight with the national executive. Good fights. That's how he made his name. So who's failing? Is it the leadership of the governors, number one, number two, the senators, and of course also the executive, because those in the executive, because they are the ones clawing back, deliberately taking over functions that were meant to the government, not sending money in good time. It's really, we've really lost a lot within 1 year of the issues that we were supposed to have seen coming from them. And when we lose, the ordinary wananchi feels it, and the cost of living goes through the roof.
So, wait, but just very quickly, compared to about 10 years ago when we began this system of governance, have we not made the achievements that we sort of looked for or focused in achieving by now?
Not in the one, we have, but in the last 1 year, we've lost so much that it will require some very serious individuals to come and tell the government, the national government, hold. And it must be war, let me tell you. If you talk to Oparanya and him, he will tell you. They would engage the president one-on-one. It is not through the control of State House or whatever. It's one-on-one and telling the president, Mr. President, no on that. And then you have the backing of the governors with you. You have the MCAs with you, and you have your chief officers with you. But it's not the case now. We now have political blocks as opposed to economic blocks. And this is where what we thought we were achieving there before.
Mheshimiwa Isaac, is it the case, you know, like more of politics at play that is sort of clawing back on the gains we've made in devolution?
As he says it, let me add one thing. Ask them how they even arrive at the leadership of their governors. It's no longer voting. It's like it's a consensus of political consensus. So you avoid the radical and end up with somebody who compromises devolution and anything controversial.
Is it, Mheshimiwa Ruto?
Yeah, when I would want to look at in the counties where they are now, other than the fact that there is plenty to be done, and the institutions that were supposed to push that. There was the transitional authority that didn't finish its work of unbundling the functions of the counties. There was the Cheserem Commission that was doing very well on revenue allocation. There was a lot of unfinished business at the Senate. There are so many laws they were supposed to finalize, but the Senate stopped looking at legislation to support devolution and ran to do parliamentary work with the National Assembly and did the politics. And they have forgotten about their core function assigned by Article 95, that they are supposed to defend and support the counties, the interests of the counties for devolution. But I also want to take note of the fact that a number of counties have actually shown progress, notwithstanding all this. Sometimes we do a lot of bashing of the counties and then forget to look at the progress. I was in Turkana about 3 weeks ago, and I saw a lot of progress. I can see street lights now in Turkana. I can see government buildings. I can see business now thriving in Turkana. I can see estates coming up in Turkana. Healthcare is now possible. I want to note particularly one occasion that has remained very memorable, the question of on healthcare. In 2014, the governor of Mandera came to the Council of Governors reporting to us in 2014 that they had done the first cesarean delivery. The first cesarean delivery since independence, they had done it in Mandera. Of course, he was elected, but we decided that was a time for mourning for the women who had died for 60 years and they could not get this particular service. Healthcare has actually improved tremendously in the counties. Although we sometimes hear of shortage of drugs, it is not the way it was when we were members of parliament. Myself and Kioni know what it was like. What it was like before 2013. It was hell in the counties. You would cry as a member of parliament because there was nothing you could do, but you are being told there is no medicine. We were fueling our own vehicles to become ambulances. You are woken up the whole night to take someone to hospital. It's not the same thing now. So there is plenty of progress in the counties, notwithstanding the fact that we never quite finalized what we ought to have done. So
don't you see what perhaps what Mheshimiwa Kioni is saying in terms of the executive exerting its own authority on, for example, what you've just touched on, the healthcare system, which really is a devolved function, right? And
it is.
The other day we see President William Ruto, of course, launching what they term as, I think, county health promoters, which essentially then should have fallen under full control of the counties.
Yeah, obviously, I think maybe the buck stops with him when nothing is happening. So he feels he must do something. In fact, the community health workers were the first ones we really wanted to bring on board. But we were told that you cannot go beyond a certain point on wage bill. And when we were asking for more money, we could not get. We had listed all the community health workers, the health volunteers, actually, because this particular cadre have done wonders to reduce, almost eliminate malaria. Malaria was a very problematic disease in Kenya. But this particular cadre have done a lot without any pay. So naturally, maybe the president thought the counties weren't chipping in, or he thought he could do some intervention, which is still okay when you are servicing. But the point here is, I think with time, this should then be integrated within the county public health situation, because it is not a national government function as per the constitution.
Right.
But nothing stops the president from doing some intervention if he thinks it has to be done. But it has to be recognized that it is a county function as per the constitution.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
On that issue of community health workers, we had...
who are now promoters. Community health promoters.
Community health promoters, semantics. But we had an engagement with about 21 governors at one sitting, and their major concern was these promoters that have come with the Ministry of Health from the national government and brought to my county. They have been dumped on my wage bill. How am I going to manage it? So, you know, that involving the county government so that they are able to manage their affairs will help us grow devolution further. But if at the end of another, maybe 1 year, one budget cycle, and if I realize that they have another wage bill because of these health promoters, they really affect them negatively. So that's what we are saying. You have to, it's not you to be invited into a function that is given to you by the Constitution. It is you to invite others into that function. Ask for help in the manner that you think devolution becomes sustainable and better for the people. So, yes, he may feel like he wanted to intervene because of that issue, but also there was quite a bit of politics. I have offered you who are campaigning for me this employment and then thrown to the budget of the county, and yet nothing is coming from the national government. Expect a huge problem from that angle.
All right.
Governors have told us.
Right. But also touching on issues of devolution is something that is happening right now and is quite a big challenge for counties to manage, and some have termed counties as poor managers of this particular matter, and it's about the not drought, but the flooding situation we're seeing in the country. Thousands homeless as rains wreak havoc. You have a number of Kenyans in need of aid as a result of the ongoing rains, which has sharply increased due to the displacement of thousands of families across the country. You have counties like Tana River, Homa Bay, Kisumu, Isiolo, numerous families being forced to relocate due to flooding of their homes and are in need of assistance. Well, there were already early warning systems that were in place. Counties were already informed that they need to prepare themselves in case of floods. Mheshimiwa Ruto, there were concerns that perhaps counties do not take these things seriously. Where is the problem? Because you've been told you have been mapped out as a hotspot for flooding, but when it hits hard because there was no prior planning to ensure there was already mitigation, preparedness in place for when the floods do come.
That's not something that the counties can do on their own. It's not practical. Remember, that is a serious emergency situation that requires a concerted effort between both national and county governments, including other players. Flooding is not a simple matter. You saw even the same rains are causing havoc in France. What can you say about France, which now has problem of flooding in the streets? Here, we ought to do something. But that has to be a concerted effort. Remember, in the counties, we put in a small figure for emergency, which is about 2%, I think. And 2% won't do much to support these situations. That does not say that counties should remain complacent to this. I've seen other counties come up with breaches, knowing these rains will cause some flooding. They have, I've seen, I saw one in Bomet where they were raising the levels of the bridge because the waters were likely to pass there. And I think other counties may have also done one or two other things, but that is not enough. This is a serious emergency situation, and it requires the ministry that used to be there. It was called
National Disaster Management.
National Management.
Right.
That they need to map the country and deliberately assign money over a period of time. It is not something to be done that particular financial year, because you will talk about El Nino and say the rains are coming, and the exchequer will be released 1 week after the rains have set in. So what do you do? So really, these are some of the things we really need a national conversation on. It's not something that you can quite blame, even if there was a minister. He will just be a minister if there is no serious planning nationally and assignment of function to that particular ministry.
All right.
We've got a clear history of the trends. We know what can happen in Budalang. We know what can happen in Kano Plains. We know what can happen, what usually happens in Tana River. That has been happening since I don't know when.
This is not a new phenomenon.
Yes, it is not new.
We have actually a disaster management agency established through a statute of parliament. And while the counties have a lot to play, it is more of a national government exercise because of the magnitude that it comes with it. On top of those, you have the landslides that have hit us sometimes in places like Muranga, where people are buried, and those are not exercises you expect the counties to undertake. If you look at countries like the US, one of the main things that brings president down is the ability to respond to disasters that hit them across the states. And if the head of state does not even make a physical visit to that area, it is looked upon like a person who has no feeling for the people. So what we are seeing with this havoc is not, I think that is where perhaps we would have seen the hand of the executive more coming to help and work together with the county. And remember, I think these lanes have just started. They have just started. From the look of things, is that things can get worse. Actually, if you saw Mombasa when the king was here, by the way, I don't know how the king got from the hotel to the airport.
Because the rains were pounding really hard.
I don't know whether he used a chopper or something, but we have to be better prepared again. Something that was said 20 years ago, that we have to be better prepared for these disasters. Unfortunately, we are saying it again.
Again and again, it becomes a normal cycle to just have a conversation around them.
It's very annoying.
All right. Okay. So we'll be having a report soon on a story that was filed there by, I believe it was, all right, I think Sydney Chazima in a moment. But let me just wind up on the paper. Business Daily, we'll come back to Business Daily when we're in our conversation. Middle class ditch spirits beer for keg on higher taxes. Nairobi suburbs house prices fall 10% as Ngong thick again. And also on the ticker of the BD, what key numbers say about the economy, we'll have a look at that. Kenya's FDI from Dubai hits 38 billion shilling, and judge throws out 305 billion M-Pesa class action suit. On the East African quickly, how Uganda AGOA ban will impact EAC. That's the economic effects which are forecast to spill over to the regional trading partners as the value chains are heavily integrated. And also why Kenya got cut off Kampala oil supply deal. You can have a look at that particular report on our East African publication. On Taifa Leo, moto Kenya Kwanza inasema hivyo. Serikali ya Kenya Kwanza ikionekana kukumbwa na vita vya ndani kwa ndani, viongozi wake wakuu wakitofautiana, kushambuliana na kukosoana hadharani kuhusu masuala yanayohitaji kuwa na msimamo mmoja. Pia mkono wa Rais Ruto ulivyonasua matangi kutoka vinywa vya MCAs. Vita vya Israel vyaingia mwezi wa pili, na Machogu aonya shule kuhusu mambo ya karo. All right, and I think that's actually a good one. I would like to get your thoughts on that before we move on. It's about what is happening, the KCSE. Still, issues of high cheating cases already been, reported there. The ongoing KCSE exams rocked by cheating allegations. Yesterday, of top education officials suspended from overseeing the test and some arrested. You have the highest ranking casualty, which was Nyambaria High School Chief Principal Charles Onyori, who was stood down as the center manager of the school in Nyamira County for allegedly becoming involved in facilitating examination irregularities. This school topped the list in the 2022 exam with an impressive mean score of 10.90. That's the mean score they got. You also have in police custody principals of Gekonge High School and 3 other teachers, according to a senior officer from the DCI. Principal Morris Oyugi and the teachers were arrested while in a process of photocopying examination papers. Mheshimiwa Ruto, where do you think the problem here is? Remember, if we can remember the time that this cheating problem was completely almost not a conversation anymore, but this appears to have, it looks like there's a comeback.
I wonder why it's coming back, and especially from a region that used to have such problems and had stopped. I don't know, had it stopped or it was under the carpet. There is a serious problem there. But I think it also points out to the fact that some leaders at the level of principals have refused to take up leadership seriously. Because what do we want to achieve if we can teach our children that they can cheat and they become successful? I think cheating should never be encouraged, and I really wonder how principals can participate in that. If maybe 1 or 2 junior teachers can attempt, we can say it's part of growing up. But how about principals? And I must congratulate the police for taking action. They seem to be doing something reasonable, and we hope they are giving us tangible evidence, like the one saying photocopy.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. We don't want police that act also on witch hunt. I think it is okay if they are actually bringing evidence of that. But I think it points out to a much more serious problem of serious patriotism and discipline on the part of senior teachers.
Yeah. Do you think this is a bad mark on our education system?
I don't think it is the education system as such. I think there is
just an issue that sort of needs to be addressed on its
yes,
own.
And this thing permeates, it goes all the way to the rest of the country.
Right.
You find ethical behavior has become wanting. Yeah, the days when people used to work hard seem to be gone. People want to get rich quick in so many other sectors as well, but they don't want to follow normal paths of growth.
Right.
They want to take shortcuts. So we will have to look at all this and relook at our ethics and values as a nation. And we must start addressing that as well. Because these things happen then everywhere. If it is in the teaching service, probably it is in the political arena, probably it is in other sectors, parastatals, then what happens?
It goes back to our national ethos.
Yes.
Right.
What happened to our national ethos? And I think this is also the failure of even the ESCC has not quite taken up. We were looking at the counties, but there are institutions that have refused to grow and take responsibility and drive the country in the direction, the trajectory that was expected. Yeah.
Yes, Mheshimiwa Kioni, something quick on this before we take a break?
Not a very quick one, because I see like my colleague lost his sting. If you wanted to be, we used to call him the smiling assassin. Today I can't see the sting anymore. This thing... He
probably lost the weapon as an assassin.
If you can't get the education of our children right, there is nothing else you can get right in your political career. When Kibaki came to power, even before he assumed office, while he was still in his own residential house, the first thing he addressed was the issue of education. And he declared free primary education while he did not even have a coin in his pocket. But he was dedicated to ensuring that any losses or wastage that was there in the government was going to be done away with, and whatever savings made, used for education. This thing stops with Machogu. I don't know why my colleague is saying so many things. Machogu comes into office last year, and we see issues that you cannot be able to explain. He comes in when schools had already done mock exams. And the results that come at the end of the year are completely different from what had been seen during the mock. And teachers can tell you there is a correlation between how you perform during those mocks and what comes at the end of the national exam. And again, from a given region. And since day one, the quality or the integrity of our examination process have continued or has continued having questions. The Machogu and his team must tell us. When Matiang'i was there, we were on an upward. You'd sit back, plate and say, whatever comes out is what my child scored, what our schools were able to perform. And we were able to address issues in schools, in counties, in constituencies, to raise the standard of our, because we knew the marking was standard. It's no longer the case. And that's why you can actually see people having accessed this examination one way or another. There's nothing new. There's nothing to commend the police for. Remember, he walked into examination council one morning and he sent everybody home. That kind of a clean slate, we have lost it. Like many other sectors that have been lost by this regime, education is just an indicator that things are not well. You cannot introduce the funding system that we are now seeing at the university. A crisis. Education is a birthright. Whether you have money or you do not have, the child must go to school on account of the national government. But now we can actually see that you have money, the grading. This grading to Kenyans is an opportunity to corrupt the whole system. And you can actually see how things are getting worse. I've just seen in this newspaper, the Nation newspaper on page 3, Murang'a leads in child offenders with majority booked for stealing. It has something to do with education. Why are they not in school? Why are they having so much time to go around and being used by parents to steal? Cost of living, of course, but there must be something. Take these children back to school. Remember, for the first time, I think in 20 years, we are sending kids home for 2 months and I think 9 days. Never happened before. The longer you have kids out of school, the more you get in trouble in the education system. Everything is wrong on the issue of education policy.
But also remember, this is coming at a time when there's a huge transition as well, when it is, we're transitioning to a different curriculum. There have been, if it is huger than the government or the regime, then there's a problem. These are things, and that's why there's continuity and transition. They needed to have come in and knew that one of the major things would be to transit our children from one system of education to another. And that is where they needed the focus. They failed there, like they have failed in many other areas. Have they? Because we have the Presidential Working Party, which already has recommendations on how things should be done, especially on this new curriculum, right?
I think it is important to say this because there are some things being taken rightly. If the free secondary education is taken from January, it's taken away from the parents from January, expect a very chaotic country.
All right. I want us to take a break. We're going to be back in a short while.